right, guys. I wanted to welcome everybody and good morning. Today is our first series of Keller Williams Commercial and Keller Williams Consultants Realty's commercial classes. And today we're focusing on Airbnb. We're working with the fabulous Heath Green. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Heath is a Kentucky native. Heath Green is a 2014 graduate from the University of Kentucky who loves supporting and promoting local. Heath has a vast array of experience that has led him for the past 4 years to work alongside his partner, Josh, building their company, Kentucky Life Property Management. Within 3 years, they were able to build a 7-figure business and have launched the short-term division that is now a $250,000 portion of their business. Recently named Central Kentucky's best property management company for the second year in a row, Heath is now helping launch several development projects in their market, a new division within their company, and local partnership. Heath enjoys traveling, designing, interior and exterior when it comes to real estate, and loving on his 2 Datsuns and Jack Russell. Heath, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Super excited to be here. So I kind of told Troy, anytime you guys have questions, just go ahead and throw them in the comment box. We'll kind of do questions throughout. I know stuff like this is kind of a little bit easier to kind of talk in the midst of everything rather than waiting till the very end. So what I'm kind of talk to you guys about today is a lot of opportunity and what we've kind of seen in short term, particularly what we'll refer to as Airbnb rentals. So here in the Midwest, we call them short-term rentals compared to vacation rentals. And the simple reason behind all of that is we've seen that a large demographic of guests staying, yes, while they might be coming into your area for certain travel or experiences or stuff that is particular to your region or location, they're also considered more short-term stays rather than going to the beach for longer periods of time. The average amount of stays in the Midwest, particularly in the Ohio Valley region, are going to be 2 to 3 nights compared to 5-7 nights when you're going to see more towards on the East or West Coast. So that's what kind of all of that's about. I think the interesting fact, first off, is does anybody on here own a short-term rental currently? Yes, no? Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. We've seen too, a lot of our owners, so we manage a little over 1,200 properties here in Central Kentucky. And we've seen that we studied this, starting in around 2017. A lot of our clients from the East and West Coast and our international clients that invest in Central Kentucky, we're starting to bring up this area of short-term Airbnb rental, the ways that you can maximize income on properties, especially in opportunity zones, and really started to probe us, asking us if we would start this division within our company. So we did our due diligence, and we don't believe in starting anything before we understand 100% about it all. So what we did is we kind of studied several different markets and our market in general for about 1.5 years before we even launched. And what we kind of noticed and saw, and it's a trend that continues to kind of be a trend in most cities and areas within the Ohio Valley region. So for example, I'm going to use the city of Lexington, which is where our office is based out of. In 2016, we hosted 1,500 guests. In 2017, we hosted 27,000 guests. So that's a huge jump from 1 year. In 2018, we hosted 46,000 guests. 2019, it was over 80,000. And we were projected for this year, before pre-COVID, to host over 100,000 guests with a little less than 1,000 rentals on the market. To kind of give it another kind of proximity for you, the city of Lexington, which is the second largest city in Kentucky, we have around a little less than 900. It's actually a little less than 800 now after COVID, short-term rentals on the market. The city of Louisville has almost 2,500. So there is an occupancy difference, but our market's definitely not saturated. And what we've kind of seen is some of the smaller counties and cities around us are now starting to pick up that momentum. Our area, and I know Ohio's kind of going through the same thing as well, that the states are really working on ways to bring revenue back into these areas of the country that previously are kind of looked away from. So I know for Cincinnati, for example, there's a lot of new breweries coming up. The food scenes are really coming in Columbus. There's a lot of Fortune 500 companies there. And you'll see that with short term, these guests are coming for a vast array of reasons. They're not just here to stay and go visit family. They could be coming into for hospital reasons. I know you guys have probably seen this with the market recently. There's a lot of people being displaced because they didn't think their house would sell as quickly. There's a huge shortage in healthcare right now. So for example, we have 6 of our properties right now are hosting traveling nurses for the next 3 to 6 months because our healthcare facilities here in Central Kentucky have a huge shortage. So they're bringing people from the outside in. They have a larger stipend that they can pay for housing. They're wanting something that's a little bit more comfortable, and they're wanting to truly live like a local, but don't want to have to bring anything with them. So what's the data really saying about our market? And then we're going to kind of, because I know we have people from everywhere, and then we're going to kind of talk about Ohio as well. So our average daily rate's around $120 a night. On average, the monthly revenue is around $1,700 plus. Most of our property, and then our average occupancy rate's around 58%. Our average occupancy as a company is around 82%. And then most of our properties are seeing around a 3 to 4 times net gain compared to a traditional rental. So if it rented for, let's say, $900 a month, we're typically seeing 2, 3, or 4 times the amount of income coming in. Our average is about 3 times that amount. So I'll use an example. We have a property that the owners purchased for $135,000. They did minor renovations. It was previously on the market as an Airbnb before, but they're grossing around 7. Their net expenses every month is around $4,000 to $5,000. Just to put it in perspective, that property on a traditional rental, you would probably be netting $300 to $500. So you're netting $4,000 to $5,000 compared to $300 to $500. I mean, if you ask me, I think that's a pretty good investment for $135,000. So, and they use it about 5 days a month, if not more, and they're still getting those returns. So just to kind of compare that to the city of Louisville, their average daily rate's around $159. So obviously our average daily rate's a little bit lower. Their occupancy is right in line with us, which is around 58%. And their monthly income is around a little over $2,000. So about $400 more, which goes right in around with their average daily rate. So that totally makes sense. What I always say to you when you kind of think of an Airbnb or short-term rental, if your occupancy is not above 50%, then you're doing something wrong. Either your location's incorrect, your amenities are incorrect, you have bad marketing and pictures, you have bad reviews, there's something going on wrong. You should be at least booking your property 15 days minimum every single month. If not, you're not even going to receive the return that even makes this financially feasible for you or your clients. So we'll kind of go into the Columbus area. That average daily rate's around $143. The occupancy rate is a lot higher than here in Central Kentucky. It's around 64%. And the average monthly revenue is a little over $2,000. And you all currently have a little over 1,400 rentals currently on the market. And I know that's kind of fluctuating a little bit because you guys are going through some regulation changes. There's some stuff going on in certain areas and districts. We're currently experiencing that in our market as well. But fortunately, kind of the good part of COVID in 2020 put a halt to all of that. So we're still trucking as normal. We currently don't really have a lot of regulations here in Central Kentucky, particularly Lexington and the surrounding counties. And then Cincinnati, Ohio, I like to do a direct comparison because I know you like to compete with them sometimes, is $116. So your guys' in Columbus is a lot higher than compared to Cincinnati. Their average monthly revenue is around $1,600. So you guys are about $400 more a month. They're at 63%, so occupancy, which is incredible. So if I was an investor looking at this, I would rather probably invest in the Columbus area compared to the Cincinnati area. And the reason is because your all's average occupancy rates are just a 1% difference, but those investors are making $400 more a month. So why wouldn't you just invest in that area? And from a saturation standpoint, Cincinnati has a little over 1,200, Columbus had a little over 1,400. So there's not a huge difference in, saturation from that standpoint. So that kind of makes sense for me. I'll give you Dayton, Ohio as well. So Dayton, their average daily rate's $100, so a lot less than both Cincinnati and Columbus. Their average monthly revenue is only around $1,500, but it's close to Cincinnati, so it could be a potential other area. There's 67% occupancy there, which is right along with Cincinnati, and they only have 265 units on the market. So as you kind of see too, a way to kind of look at this is as regulations start to happen in these larger cities, and especially from a commercial standpoint, where you'll see a lot of commercial opportunities come to the market, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute, in opportunity zones and that kind of thing, it's going to kind of start to sprawl. So Dayton would be a really cool middle area to start investing in or looking to invest in, because when the pressure starts to squeeze on both of these two larger cities, people and guests are still going to want to be in a general area, and Dayton's kind of in the middle for a quick drive time for either or. Does that kind of make sense? So I always say too is like, so if Columbus starts to really, downtown Columbus starts to put pressure on it, you can't have short-term rentals or Airbnbs, then how can you still get guests into this area who are obviously traveling, they're not going anywhere, but still meet guidelines and criteria? You got to kind of think smart, especially for you or your clients. How many of you guys currently are working with investors? Do we have a number? Several of you guys. So one thing that we're really helping with our clients right now, and we just got probably one of the biggest projects we've ever landed here at our company. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar project. I'm super excited to share it with you guys and hopefully host some of you all soon. But a client that called us out of the blue was under contract in their due diligence period for a commercial space that is right downtown in Lexington, but it's in an opportunity zone. And they had this great idea that they kind of wanted to do some kind of boutique style hotel or short-term rental or condo. So they started running all their numbers. As you all know, from a real estate standpoint, especially from an investing standpoint, it's all about numbers. Numbers is the magical formula behind it all. That's, when you work with investors, it's all a numbers game. How can you get them the most return for their buck? So they came in, we did a whole presentation for them. They were already working with an architect, but basically they're taking a 10,000 square foot commercial space and we're going to create 8 Airbnb units in it. So we're kind of modeling it to they're taking a risk, and they were kind of asking like, why is nobody else doing this? And there's several projects in Lexington in particular that we're moving into this direction. We have a huge shortage of lodging right now in general, even before COVID, and even through COVID, there's still a shortage. So they were like, why is nobody else taking some of these opportunities that are coming up? And it's because they weren't talking to the right people. They don't have the numbers or the data, and they're scared. So right now in our city of Lexington, they're redoing the convention center. They're adding a huge downtown park that's going to run through the entire center of Lexington. They're adding all these new restaurants. All of this new development is happening, but there's not a lot of lodging coming in at it as well. This commercial space came available where it's going to be 2 floors right now. They're going to add a 3rd floor penthouse to it. We're going to do an amenity-driven gym with Pelotons and all kinds of workout equipment. We're going to do an event space up there that overlooks the entire downtown, and Rupp Arena, which is if you're a sports fan, that's where the Wildcats play. And right across the street, to the corner of that, a California investor has been working for several years on creating this huge amenity-driven bowling alley, sports bar, entertainment area that was going to launch right in the beginning of COVID. So that's on standby right now. But literally, it's going to be all amenity-driven. We're going to treat it like a boutique-style hotel. It has 33 parking spots, which is unheard in downtown. Super cool, character-wise. And when we kind of started to lay out the numbers from a commercial standpoint, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but it's starting not to make sense for the clientele that would typically have to go in there. You'd have to still do a huge remodel, or a client that's a commercial client that would be coming in, they're going to have to spend a lot to get it to what they would need to. When you kind of started to look at it from a condo standpoint, numbers still kind of work, but for the amount of work that would have to be going into it, just still didn't work. So the biggest reason we went with short term was A, the numbers made sense. B, is going to help add with property value. C, they're ahead of the game in the trend. And then another factor was if things start not to work out, it's already set up that we can start condoing some of these out. And by that time, the market's kind of fluctuated again, and the numbers on that side would make more sense. So when you start to work with investors too, I always say that, like, make sure that you're looking at something that's going to work in multiple areas. Don't just put all of your money saying that, like, you're going to be able to purchase this cool abandoned warehouse. We're going to trick it out, and it's going to be all of these really neat Airbnbs. And then all of a sudden you have regulations. The market starts to act weird. We have another pandemic, and things just don't make sense anymore. So I always say, make sure your numbers are going to run from an Airbnb standpoint, which are going to be your highest cash flow. From there, it makes sense as a traditional rental, whether that be a residential or commercial or mixed use space. And then from that aspect, you kind of start to outweigh your options. Are you ever going to be able to be stuck with this property too? You know, if you had a resale for whatever reason and you sunk all of this money in, is it going to be attractive to another buyer? I know we're getting some questions.
Heath, I'll manage that for you. The first question is how are you financing? Many lenders, including banks, don't feel comfortable lending on Airbnb projects, large commercial projects.
Yep. So the funny that you say that, we're working with another client right now who's going through the whole financial thing's a little tricky right now. So they're purchasing a historic home that's currently separated out into multiple apartments, mixed use space that artists are renting for commercial space. And then we have this huge vision with it all. To be honest with you, it gets a little bit tricky. We typically will present it in multiple ways. So we will run numbers and help our clients, or anybody that comes to us, what it would bring in as a traditional rental, what it would bring in as an Airbnb rental, and then kind of hybriding the two of those, and then really working and shopping around. Our client that I was just telling you about, they typically go with one bank only. They do multiple deals a year. They're just not able to make it work because they're a little scared with this mixed use space. So that's the issue he's currently having, to try to find someone else. But I say you always have to be open and candid up front. And sometimes if it's not making sense for a bank, is it really making sense to make that move as well? And then we've had some people too that they'll present it and they're willing to take the risk, and they'll just run it off regular, traditional, commercial, or long-term, and then just go in and then go from there. Do you have another question? Indianapolis numbers? I do have numbers for Indianapolis. So average daily rate for Indianapolis is around $135. Their average occupancy, is 57%. Average monthly revenue is around $1,800, and there's currently around 2,200 units on the market. My biggest thing was, I'll give you Avon, Indiana's numbers, because I don't know, like, I'm still looking at these, I'm like, why aren't people investing here? $247 average daily rate, 71% average occupancy. They bring in around $3,500 a month, and there's only 13 units on the market. So there's a lot of opportunity over there.
Josh, we had a couple other questions, and we'll continue to do this throughout the presentation. Josh had asked that questions can come up as we go. What is your average cleaning fee?
It's a great question. Cleaning is probably the nightmare behind all of this. If you don't like to manage people, I would say do not get into short-term rentals, because your cleaning is probably the number one thing, that you're having to manage. We're huge on standards. That's the number one thing that is critiqued and judged, and it's all opinion-based. It's a thankless business. Our average cleaning fee is around $75. And I will say this, if you kind of look at the market, we're a little higher on that end. And for example, some of our units were around $45 to $55, but the numbers started not to make sense with our cleaners. And for us personally, we meet with our cleaning crews in person at least once a month to go over progress, what's working for them at the properties that they're in charge of, what ideas they have for us, what we see is working on. We have a whole review report that we go on. And it just kind of seemed from a number standpoint, it just wasn't worth their time. $75 is still a reduced number for most of those properties, but they're getting such high turnover and they're doing it so many times a month that they're able to take a hit on some expense and it offsets others.
Is that cleaning fee $75 a day or is it per visit?
Per visit. So if you stay for 10 days, it's $75. Granted, anytime we do a longer stay, so anything over 3 weeks, typically we'll increase the cleaning fee. And there's other ways that I'll negotiate that kind of stuff too. So I try to have our guests book on the platform as much as possible, just because there is a coverage policy that Airbnb offers, and they can leave a review, and you're not manually blocking the calendar that hurts your algorithms with the property. So I try to book everything on the property as much as possible. Airbnb has an agreement now that anything over 30 days you're not paying taxes for, because it's considered a long-term stay. Basically before COVID, that was not in existence. So guests were not wanting to book on here because they were having to pay taxes on 2 to 3 months, which was huge. Already paying premiums. But what I typically do on longer term stays is I'll kind of either build another price into that premium rate, or I'll kind of tell them, hey, it's going to be an additional cleaning fee. This is our base cleaning fee. You're staying X amount of time. It's going to be this.
Okay, next question this is from Diana. Has the SBA been helpful in financing? That's where 10% is put down as a traditional commercial loan. 10% is financed through the SBA and a fixed loan, usually for about 5 years. Are they involved in this type of investment?
We've had a few clients that have kind of gone that route. I'll tell you from our standpoint, most of the clients that we're working with are either converting their already traditional rentals into short-term, or they are personal homes that they have since moved from or only coming to the area for certain times and are using as a short-term. I'm really interested. We're going to have a conversation later on next week with our guys that are buying this commercial space, and seeing how they're making all of those numbers work from a financial standpoint, but they haven't released that just yet.
A recurring question is, how do you charge for your guests? What are pass-throughs that are charged to the actual guest, and how do you do that on a basis? And I think we should talk about taxes for hotel taxes, the cleaning fees, and then the actual rent too.
So let's talk about taxes first. So taxes is a great thing. That's one of the number one reasons why cities are trying to put such regulations and kind of shrink this style of lodging, is because they don't think they're benefiting. But in all honesty, it's an education piece. So that's something that I've been really heavily focused on here in Central Kentucky, is educating both our city officials and others that are kind of opposing this on, this is actually bringing revenue into our city. And by guests staying as a short term, they're actually stimulating the economy more, because for one, they're going out and supporting local. They're going out and walking to these restaurants. They're going out and buying food at grocery stores and bringing it in and cooking. They're stimulating the economy in a productive way like that. They're also coming into town, falling in love with cities. I'm actually working with a client right now who we sold them this house. I'm designing it out right now and furnishing it. He stayed with us in an Airbnb, fell in love, wanted a second home, so he chose Lexington. So they just purchase they're coming in, they're going to stimulate the economy, and they're all obviously offering another way for other guests to utilize this home, and they're going to keep the property up. Every state and city is a little bit different when it comes to taxes. For example, the city of Lexington has a city agreement with Airbnb, and the whole state of Kentucky has an agreement with Airbnb to collect and remit taxes paid for by the guest and remit on the host behalf. So with using Airbnb, we never have to worry about taxes. However, I do have some counties that I have Airbnbs in that the state tax is collected and paid for by the guest, but the local transient occupancy tax is not collected or paid for by the guest. So what we do in that sense is you can go on to Airbnb and you can add an itemized charge. Most of those tax percentages are around 3 or 4% in our case. And we'll go ahead and say 3% of this times their nightly rate, and then the guest ends up paying it. So we add it as an itemized charge. And then from our end, we collect that income, we'll book that income, and we remit it on behalf of our clients every single month or quarter, depending on how that city collects those. So that's a good question. Depending on where your city is and your state agreements, I believe Ohio has a state agreement already with Airbnb. You would ask those questions to see how you need to set that up. But that would be the number one way that A, you're going to get in trouble, and B, it helps prove that you can, have numbers to support. this one property is bringing X amount of dollars into our city. So that kind of answers the tax question. Other itemized things that we do, all guests pay for their cleaning fees. That's another itemized charge. If they bring a pet, we do pet fees. This is another way to help generate income. Late check-in or check-out, that's another way that you would generate income. That's going to be all done after the booking, and you're going to have to send a request for that. We offer other amenities as well. So we can stock the fridge, we can do anniversary packages, all of these different items. We truly treat it like a hotel, a Kentucky life experience. Those are other ways that you can help guests pay and generate income as well.
Okay, Danny had a question on a 3-bedroom rent in Columbus. So when you're doing beds, are you doing 2 people per bed? Are you doing 1 person per bed? Are you doing it by bedroom? Let's say a 3-bedroom place in German Village in Columbus. How would you price that out?
I would do it based on bed count, bed size, and size of property. So obviously, if you have this little 600 square foot apartment that has 3 bedrooms, is it really comfortably going to fit 6 people? Because I will tell you, you will be eaten alive by people showing up, and the pictures look great, and then the amenities look great, and they show up and they're basically on top of each other. So be honest and transparent. What we typically do is per bed, it's 2 people. Anything under a full, I typically will say 1 person. So a full size bed or a twin is obviously 1. If it's a pull out sleeper sofa, then that's 2 people. If it's a queen size, I do not typically advise or count futons. You do air mattresses as well. You can do that as 2 people if it's a queen size or above. I think somebody might be on unmuted.
Yeah, Weil, if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Apologize.
Mute? I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. I'll take care of it.
I would also say bathrooms are another big thing to think about. Once you get past 2 bedrooms, you honestly, more people will start to book if you have even a half bath. So if you have 3 bedrooms plus, you really need to have 1.5 to 2 bedroom or 1.5 to 2 baths. As you increase your bedroom count and your occupancy count, you continue to need to increase that as well. We have a historic property that can sleep literally probably like 20 something people. And the owners are like, oh my gosh, that's great. We're going to all of this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, one, you're attracting parties. You're attracting large groups to come in that it could potentially trash the place. Just because you have the space in the room to house all of these guests does not mean we need to do that. So I really try to help our clients look and refine. That's what we're working with this commercial space for, is really designing layouts that are functional and make sense for multi-use purpose, but really make sense from an Airbnb standpoint. You don't always have to have your traditional huge bedrooms, huge closets, and that kind of stuff, but you have to be amenity driven. I would say living space is more important than bedrooms when it comes to Airbnb.
Angie has a really big question, and we're going to push that in a minute because it's a really tough one as far as how do you acquire, and walk you through the process of identifying a property. But before that, we just have a couple other little questions. Is there a damage deposit that's charged to the guests in advance?
So you can set up a damage deposit. That is a separate itemized charge that you could charge for guests. One, we started out doing that for all of our properties, and we saw our occupancy levels start to drop. Even though they would most likely get that deposit back, as an extra expense they are having to pay for up front, especially on your lower income properties. 2, it's much harder to recoup that damage deposit than, even though they paid for it, typically they always get it back and then you're fighting with Airbnb. So we do not do any kind of damage deposits on any of our properties. We just take into consideration that, so when it comes to a property, if someone damages something, steals something, or there's an issue, you either have 14 days between checkout to remit that into the resolution center at Airbnb to try to recollect the lost expense, or you have up to the next guest check-in. So if you have a guest that checks out at 11 and you have a guest that checks in at 3 and your guest at 11 damaged something, you have to submit an itemized detailed expense report into Airbnb before 3 o'clock. If you don't, you will not get paid for anything.
Okay. And are taxes handled differently in living in a different state than Airbnb is? As in, is there double income tax or anything like that?
No, shouldn't be any kind of issues with anything like that. I always ask your accountant on any kind of particular tax questions, but you shouldn't be charged double. I wouldn't see. It's basically you're treating it as a hotel. So all of your occupancy and transient tax are being paid for by the guest. You would just be basically paying property tax, just like a traditional investment property.
Lisa asked a good question on different types of cleaning that happens during the length of stay. Sometimes we have the refresh where the sheets are put back or there's a little cleanup in the kitchen. How does that done when someone's a little bit longer term on that? We talked about the $75 fee. Is there additional fees for daily cleaning?
100%. So we treat it just like a hotel. You're either responsible for your cleaning if you're staying multiple times, or two, if you want someone to kind of come in, we would build that pricing out depending on what you would need. So if you were really wanting to stay like a hotel experience and you had a high-end client that was coming in and they wanted their sheets changed every 3 days or something like that, you would just kind of bill in that price. I will say though, that the reason people are booking Airbnbs compared to hotels, from an amenity standpoint, it's contactless. You're not having to, all of our properties, you check in automated. You have door codes or key codes to get into the property. You're never really having to get face to face with someone unless needed. So that's one reason that people are booking that now, especially with COVID. We've seen even the older demographic that are primarily booking hotels are moving to this platform of style of lodging, because they don't personally feel comfortable checking into hotels with shared space anymore. Plus, too, if they're going to have family over, they're looking for areas that they can still be social distancing, but still have everybody under one roof or one property. So I would not necessarily advertise or try to build that aspect into your business, because most people probably are not going to take advantage of it. It would be one of those things that's a case-by-case scenario. Plus, two, I mean, from a standpoint, I understand that, like, if you have someone that's staying a little bit longer, you want to make sure the property is being maintained and kept up. But I think there's other ways that you can do that. Build in a filter change while they're staying there. Have some kind of routine maintenance that someone needs to come over and check on, instead of trying to say, we need to come in and clean the property.
Can you explain to us what a superhost is? And as with all of your units, are you a superhost in all those units?
Yes, so we are a superhost with all of our units. One thing to think about is when you start to develop this style of rental, is that's something that you really want to take into effect to try to achieve. So basically, it's something that you're measured upon. I don't necessarily agree with the measurements, and that's something that they're working on right now. But basically, you're rated on how many times you cancel stays. You are negatively penalized if you cancel a reservation. Typically, within a quarter, you're rated every quarter is 1%. You are judged on your overall review and star status. It has to be a 4.8 or above. You are reviewed on your response rate. It needs to be, I believe, in 90% or above, and you have to host at least 10 guests a month, I believe, 10 stays or 10 stays within that quarter. We well exceed that. Your review standpoint is something that's really hard, and it's very, so for example, I tell you it's a thankless business, because you can have somebody rate you 5s all the way through, but it's not an average. So you get asked for an average score, and then your guests also rate you on cleaning, check-in, communication, all of these other things. They can give you 5s in all of this and give you a 4 or 3 above. And they don't even have to explain why. So that's something that you're always looking for ways to build a 5-star experience. Don't take it personal. Some people are just crazy. You can't screen crazy. And they're like so picky. You're like, what? So for example, we had somebody that checked in the brand new fridge. The water took too long to fill a glass. The water from the tap didn't taste good. So they recommended a Brita filter, pitcher filter in the fridge. And that would have been a 5-star experience for them. So.
That's crazy. Where can we find stats on each of our individual cities for Airbnb rates and other things?
Yeah. AirDNA is a great website to use. They're one of the only websites that has direct contact and get direct data from Airbnb. They're in contract with them and currently working on other platforms as well. I will say that their data can be a little bit skewed. There is a free option that you can use. There is a free rentalizer that you can use. You can also pay for subscriptions as well. I always say they kind of tend to go a little bit on the higher end. I always, when I pull data from that, I'll study the market as well. Obviously, get on your platforms, do a refined search, see what properties are renting in the area, see how many reviews they've had, and their current status. So you kind of look just like you would run comps for a regular property. You're looking at multiple different aspects. But I always take, let's say it's the dollar amount. They say the average night's 250. I'll probably drop that down to 200. Their average occupancy is 64. I'll drop it down to like 58. I always try to be very conservative with this side of the business with our clients, just because it is so ebb and flow and cyclical. You kind of don't know what to expect. Nobody expected a pandemic. We had our biggest year coming towards us. We had the World Championships with Breeders' Cup. We had a spring and fall meet at Keeneland Racetrack. There was all kinds of different horse events in the summer here in Lexington, and a plethora of concerts coming in. All of that was wiped away, so which really skewed numbers. So we had to get very creative on how we could continue occupancy and making sure that this really worked for our clients, and they didn't have to revert to a traditional rental or sell the property. So I always say be very conservative. Always underestimate. You always want to underestimate and and then overperform. So don't overpromise and then underdeliver.
Excellent one. Angie asked a real big question. How do you select, identify a property, and then how do you stage it to be that level of service that you want to show?
For sure. So I always say, one, look at the market. See what, if you're finding a property for yourself or your clients, is there other Airbnbs or short-term rentals on other platforms that are on that same street, in that same neighborhood? For us, for example, we've seen most of the suburbs and your traditional like communities aren't necessarily as desirable as something that's close to downtown or very quirky and unique. There's certain zip codes that work a lot better than others. You don't want to be just your traditional, regular, single-family home sitting in the middle of a cul-de-sac that has no charm or appeal. Yes, it's probably going to drive certain clients in, but that's not the way that you're going to really achieve and excel. So we have several clients, and I met someone this morning, one of our clients at 7, who's purchasing a property in another opportunity zone, is up and coming. It's a total rehab. Things are starting to move in that side of the city, so they're a little bit above the trend, but everything's starting to clean up. Guests already feel safe. We manage the one next door that's an Airbnb. You're going to see probably for that property 3 times the amount of income coming in. Your property value every single year is going to continue to increase and increase and increase. The one next door they purchased for almost $60,000, and they were going to sell it pre-COVID for $250,000. So it's kind of watching the trends, seeing what areas are starting to really develop, how you can kind of go in. I say the more character that a property has, the better. We've really seen here through COVID that all of our properties that are, I call them like retreat or Kentucky Oasis properties, or something that's a unique stay, those destination style properties, hands over fist, we're continuously bringing income in. So we have a horse farm that we manage. We have subdivided it in a sense that the paddocks and the back used to be tenant house is now a traditional rental. The front main historic home, we did a complete rehaul over, I guess almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. And what we have done is traditionally it was renting for $2,500 a month just for the house. Even through COVID, she was bringing in $12,000 to $15,000 a month. So it has an in-ground pool. It overlooks paddocks with horses. Guests can get out and walk. What are they coming into your area for? That's another big question to ask yourself. What kind of clientele are you going for? If we're picking a property or helping a client near one of the major universities here, either the University of Kentucky or Transylvania University that are both here in Lexington, you're getting that kind of clientele that's going to particularly come in. You're close to the hospital, so you could get traveling nurses, people coming in for chemo treatments, people coming in to stay while they can't be with their loved one during surgery. They're staying in the Airbnb, dropping their family member or friend off for surgery, and then picking them up afterwards. So you're kind of really looking to see how you can cater things. We have the horse park here in Central Kentucky as well. things on that end you're kind of catered towards. And then we kind of, you know your market better than anybody else. Where do people want to live? For example, here in Lexington, downtown hasn't been a huge scene for a while, but all of this new stuff is coming in. The younger generation wants to live downtown. They can't find enough housing, and people want to stay in downtown. So kind of think of when you're looking for these kind of properties, especially from a commercial standpoint, what makes sense? Does someone going to feel like they're safe is number one. And two, do they feel like they're, if you're buying a commercial space and converting it into a residential, do they feel like they're in a commercial warehouse? Or have you been totally able to upscale this property and this project and create this unique experience? So for example, we have one that used to be an old bakery. The whole loft has been completely changed. The owners left the old elevator shaft and put plexi over it. And you can literally stand where the old elevator used to bring the flour up. And there's like this charm and quirkiness to the property. So those kind of things really sell.
So that's the questions we have right now. Does anybody have further questions for Heath?
Hey, sorry, I'm on that Airbnb Zoom right now. What's up?
No questions right now. So I'll kind of go into like the 10 steps of what we say on how to launch a successful Airbnb. And then as we continue to talk, if you have questions, let me know, and we can continue to cater this to what your all's needs are. So I always say there's 10 easy steps to make sure something is very successful. The first step is set up your dream team. So before you even get started with even your personal self or your client, do they have the resources available, or do you have the resources available? Are you going to be self-managing, or is there a property manager that you're going to be giving this over to? That's probably the number one thing that we have seen from our side of the business is people start this project, they start self-managing, and then they're like, holy crap, I need a life and I've got to step away from this. You don't want to make it so personal where you're responsible for the cleaning, you're responsible for all guest communication. I mean, it's a 24/7 job. On average, right now, we're hosting over 400 guests a month. So just think that's 400 tenants a month. I mean, that's huge. Like, I mean, most people can't even deal with 2 to 3 clients a month because they're like pulling them in a million different directions. So typically what we've seen with Airbnb for 30 properties, that equates to about 100 to 150 to traditional rentals, if not more. So that ratio is huge. So making sure you have your dream team set up, making sure you have your maintenance guys set up that can do after hours maintenance, making sure you already have all of your lending and your realtor and all of that kind of stuff set up from the get-go, making sure you have somebody that can help with design, help with cleaning. Cleaning's number one. Help with making sure that supplies are always continuously stocked, and who's going to run the day-to-day thing. So that's your biggest one to first start to think about. If you don't have your dream team set up when you start, I hate to say it, but you're going to fail. Or you're going to get burnt out and you're going to end up wanting to push this onto somebody else, and your reviews are already going to suffer, and you're basically going to have to start all over again. Number 2 would be setting up your systems. And I think this is huge. We're very systems based here at Kentucky Life. That's something that I just made a new hire that I'm super excited about, who's going to be helping me develop the systems and take it a little bit out of my head, and other team members that help me currently with the Airbnb side of our business, and really help delegate and make sure things are running smoothly and systematized. But do you have a system for when the HVAC goes out at 12 o'clock at night? Do you have a system on who runs over or repair remote batteries or changes a smoke detector at 12 o'clock at night? Do you have a system on how to handle early check-ins and check-outs? Do you have a system on how to do your resolutions? Do you have a system on how to make sure your linens are properly being cleaned? All of these things that you don't think you have to think about, you have to think about. From the littlest of things, I will say the number one thing that gets lost or is an issue at a property is a remote. So really making sure that you're developing your systems, you're putting the amenities or these products in the property that are going to withstand multiple guests, that are easy to be cleaned, or that you can troubleshoot really easy. If you have this huge entertainment center, that's great, but if it's not easy for a guest to use, and you're having to have a VA explaining at 10 o'clock at night, your review is not going to be very good. So you want simple, easy, and make sure your systems are set up from that in the beginning. Your third step is going to be locate the property. And we kind of talked about that just a minute ago. That's really big too, on making sure that you're locating and securing a property that makes sense for you and your clients. I'm really big on historical properties, and a lot of stuff doesn't really scare me. And I think that's because of property management. You never know what you're going to walk into or see. And I think for the commercial standpoint too, especially you as realtors, you've seen here, there, and everywhere. I love to see a diamond in the rough. And I think that's something really cool to be able to help your clients with. There's some great properties out there that you can go in that are completely ready to go, that basically all you have to do is furnish. But there's also something very rewarding about helping find a property that, even if it's just cosmetic updates, completely transforms it. You can help them obviously transform their property value. If you're working with a client now, instead of focusing, like, I guess my number one question too is, are you helping your clients build wealth creation through real estate? If you're not, then you are not doing your due diligence as a realtor to help your clients out. And I think sometimes we really forget that piece of the business, and we just think about the transaction on buying and selling rather than helping someone build a portfolio. And that's why I know a lot of people are scared of investing, but really start to dive in that. I think through the COVID and through a potential, recession that is on the horizon to come, how are we helping our clients build wealth creation through real estate? Are we talking to them, telling them, instead of selling this property or this house, should they hold on to this? Should they turn it into a traditional rental or an Airbnb? How can this maximize a return that can help them fund their perfect life and build their perfect dream house or find their perfect place? I think a really cool thing that we've been helping with some clients too is they're buying duplexes or multi-county unit properties, and they're living in one side. They're really budgeting their numbers and starting to rent out the other side and doing some creative stuff. And so for example, we have one client who every piece of property that he has ever purchased, he still owns. He just had a $600,000 house that he just moved to a farm to, and we're getting ready to Airbnb that because A, the numbers make sense, B, it's something he wants to do, and he's never going to let go of any of his properties. But his realtor continues to get business because he's looking for other investments, but he's also looking to build his perfect life. So anything he's wanting to move into, but he's also finding investments. So I always say, when you locate a property, make sure, and two, you're meeting with some of your clients. Some things are going on. I always say, make sure that you have a relationship with your clients, that you're taking them out to lunch or giving them a call or having coffee and say, I have a goal this year. I want to sell X amount of units. Who do you know that I need to be speaking to? We built our business on 99.9% on repeat and referral. And I think oftentimes realtors try to focus on other ways to lead generate. But in reality, most of you probably have a sphere of clients that you've helped purchase multiple aspects in their life, whether it be personal homes or investment properties. Why are you not whining and dining these clients to help you build your business and build your real estate portfolio? So locating and securing a property is number 3. And then 4 is the secure and the purchase part, making sure that you're doing your due diligence, making sure you're not overpaying, making sure you're running your numbers beforehand. You know what it's going to cost to rehab a property, sink money into, furnish. In order to do Airbnb or short term, you have to have skin in the game. You have to pay to play. If you're not paying to play, you're failing. So, there's some more expense on the front end, but it's worth it in the long end. But there's ways that you can find products, and that we have a whole list. So like all of our mattresses that we use are bed in a box from Amazon. I just ordered a king size bed on sale for $280. I get raving reviews about them. It works. I feel guilty sometimes when guests ask where I got the mattress from, and I send them the link. And they say, that's the best night of my husband's ever slept, and he didn't snore at all. Where is this from? But it's finding ways like that to help offer comfort and amenities, but not breaking the bank. And spending a little bit more money on like your couch. We use TCL Roku TVs in all of our properties. They're easy, they're inexpensive. You can buy the 55-inch for $250. They're easy to operate. Everybody knows how to use a Roku system. It's already built in. If it does break for some reason, it's $250 compared to $1,000 for a really cool picture frame TV. So securing a purchase, making sure you know all of your numbers up front. the renovation process. That's number 5. And when it comes to renovations, what are you doing from a standpoint of, so for example, we had one client that purchased a duplex, probably the biggest duplex I've ever freaking seen. The basement was like almost 5,000 square feet. On either side, it was about 2,500. And their realtor had the great idea to turn it into 4 units. And we were like, no. It's this market, this area is never going to be able to support 4 units. You're never going to be able to get that cost back. So then they're like, perfect, we'll do 3 units and then 1 big Airbnb. And we want to do marble showers and marble. And I'm like, no. You don't have to do these things. So making sure when you're doing the renovation process, you're understanding that like you're not sinking all of this money into a project and never going to get the return. Most of you know Dana, when she purchased her property and her flip that she did, and we used as an Airbnb in a short amount of time, instead of going in and completely gutting the kitchen, we left the old original cabinets. We painted them a really cool blue color. We added new hardware. We added new countertops, new appliances, and new backsplash. So when she did go to sell that property, she didn't have to change anything, and she didn't sink this large amount of money completely reconfiguring and doing a kitchen. She did the things that buyers are going to want. But she also did stuff from an Airbnb standpoint that made it unique and characteristic. That area, people like the old quirky style, the blue. People, when they're going through pictures, they probably don't have that color Tiffany blue cabinets, but when they're searching through things and they see this bright blue kitchen, that's fun and entertaining. That's where they want to have their coffee in the morning. And at the end of the day, if somebody totally hates it, it's a coat of paint. So I think there's cool or creative ways that you can kind of do those things. This new peel and stick wallpaper that most places offer, that's a way to add texture, dimension to a space that's not going to cause a lot of damage. Paint something that's really cool, exposed brick. There's multiple ways that you can kind of renovate a property that keeps the integrity of the house, doesn't break the bank, but also offers what a guest would want. So step number 6 would be furnish and set up. And I think that's probably one of the most stressful things and the most exciting things from my end. I have a huge passion for interior design. We're getting ready to launch a whole division within our company on helping clients either furnish properties, interior design, or helping them go in and find an apartment complex or properties they already manage and picking out new paint colors, how to rehab, how can they take X amount of properties and they're getting this return. If we do X, Y, and Z, is that going to give them a larger return? We love projects like that. So furnish and setup, you obviously don't want to overdo it. It's an Airbnb. I always say you want bigger furniture, you want comfort, you want relaxation, you want amenity driven. Art and fake plants are a great way to help add color and life to a property. As much as I say, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I'm putting a fake plant in here, but it's easier to keep alive. So rugs, that kind of thing. Sometimes I personally, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to totally over accessorize and everything, but you have to pull back. The more you have, that's more for your cleaners to keep up with. It's more for them to clean. They're in there longer. There's more items that can be damaged, broken, or stolen. You want it to feel lived in. You don't want it to feel like grandma's garage sale from the estate that she just sold, or your bachelor furniture that you haven't used, that you've had in a storage unit that you occasionally throw in your listings for staging. You want it to feel new, vibrant, and livable, but you don't have to overdo it. And the great thing with short-term too is you can continuously adapt and change. So if a guest says, hey, like, we love the living room, the couch is super comfortable, but like, we just really wish we had an extra place to like sit or like put our feet up. That's a way that you can always add and change something. You can continuously adapt and change from there. Stocking your property is number 7 in the steps. Making sure that you're visiting your local visitor centers, making sure that you're going and adding pamphlets and flyers and all of that kind of information. I think another thing that I've seen that realtors oftentimes forget about is if your clients have Airbnbs, or if you do, why are you not putting your company swag in there? So if you have a real estate team, why are you not saying, hey, Sally Sue, it's a pleasure doing business with you. I would love to put these in your property for your guests to use. And they're my tumblers that have my logo on them. Do you mind if I also maybe leave some flyers around for them? You would be surprised the amount of relocation people that come in, and we've even gotten business from people not working with a realtor or who are coming in, and we've gotten a ton of leads from people who are coming in and need to rent for a while before they purchase because they want to adapt, but they're staying in these Airbnbs because they're wanting to see what areas of town they like. So they're shopping the market before they even purchase or rent here. So things like that, leaving koozies along, leaving different kind of just swag, pins, and that kind of stuff. When stocking your property, all of our properties, we fully stock the kitchen when it comes to pots, pans, utensils, all of that. We always have spice racks, salt and pepper. I've seen that most people respond 5-star around the board when they find that there's a spice rack. We leave bottles of water, and then for our case, sometimes local beers, bourbons, L8s for our guests. Our higher end properties, we really stock with other snacks and everything. And then we leave local Kentucky chocolate bars made here locally in Central Kentucky for all of our guests as well. We leave shampoo, conditioner, body wash, soaps. I've started to do little goodie packs with like makeup wipes, Q-tips, toothbrushes, all of that kind of stuff. And then depending on why a guest is coming in, I think you can obviously kind of see what their needs might be. And you can kind of always add these things. I think it's something important too to think from a cost perspective. You obviously don't want to be spending $100 per guest on all of these things and only be making 20 bucks. But there's ways that you can continuously fluctuate. I think with your larger, higher end properties, the more amenity driven that you can be. All of our properties have sheets, extra towels, pillows, all of that's provided. All linens are there. All terry is there. We do hotel style bath mats that are washed every single time instead of your traditional bath mats or rugs in bathrooms because it appears cleaner. It's easier for our cleaners to wash and do. So that's kind of when it comes to stocking the property. We leave general basic cleaning supplies around for everybody, making sure that there's brooms, vacuums, that kind of thing, because you never know how long somebody's going to stay. Luggage racks, hangers. You want somebody, if they're there for a night to 30 nights, to feel like they're able to use the home. And you'll see that sometimes you'll get repeat and referral customers, especially for us. We see a lot of people traveling into our area. And once they found a property that suits them, they book and book and book, and that's continuous income. And then they refer. Pre-listing preparation is the key. So your whole pre-listing process before you even launch it onto a platform, I continuously continue to talk about Airbnb because that's the platform that works for our market. Vrbo, HomeAway, other platforms like that, they don't have agreements necessarily with taxes 100% yet. They charge higher fees to the actual host. There's a multitude of different reasons why I don't use those platforms. So making sure you know what platform you're going to do, making sure you understand how to pre-list. I overkill my listings. So if I know that the neighbor's noisy next door, list it because they have a dog. If it's the parking spot's really hard to get into, list it. If you know that it's an older home and the floors are uneven and they're quirky, list it. The more things that you can list up front, it sets yourself up for a success on a 5-star review in the end. Pre-listing too, making sure you understand you've walked the property with your cleaning crew to make sure that it's a win-win situation when it comes to cleaning. Are they okay and comfortable with that cleaning fee? Do they know where the supply closet is? Do they know how to gain access to the property? Can they do change light bulbs and all of that kind of stuff for you if need be? Launching your listing is number 9. When it comes to launching your listing, I always say if you don't have professional photography, especially working in this field, then there is something wrong. It is completely driven off of reviews, just like Amazon is, and visual image. The more visually appealing a property is, and then when it matches the description, and then it matches the reviews, and the price is right, it's a success. We know with real estate, especially with rentals, it's all about price and condition. If price is right and condition is right, it's going to rent. If one or the other is off, there's going to be an issue. But when you're launching your listing too, the more detailed you can be, the better. You know, I typically sometimes do overkill in pictures compared to some in our market. And the reason I do that is because I want our guests to be able to see from all aspects and angles what a room is really going to be looking like, making sure they understand the layout before they even arrive. And 2, from a standpoint of you always have your most appealing pictures and rooms up front. And then from there, I kind of segue it into literally from the time they walk into the front door by room, almost if it's like a 3D image, but they're flipping through a picture book. It just makes it so much easier launching your listing, understanding your pricing strategies and tools. How many months are you going to open your calendar for? Are you going to do it by month? Are you going to accept one night stays? For most of our properties, except our higher end properties on the weekends, we allow one night minimums. And the reason we do that is our cleaning crews can obviously support that. And two, we're able to increase occupancy. And then when we have a random Wednesday that's unbooked, I can drop that rate, and that's extra income from the owner. It's not an expense because it would just be sitting there. If not, the guest is already paying the cleaning fee and the taxes. That's an extra $75 compared to $125 that they just gained. But you also, when it comes to launching your listing, you want to make sure that you're not pricing yourself out of the market or under the market. You don't want to start attracting guests that are not supposed to be in that area or that property. We don't allow locals on the weekends unless approved, just because we're not trying to get somebody from Lexington staying here that's throwing a bachelorette party that's going to have 20 people, but they only say they're going to have 8. It's okay to ask probing questions when you're managing your listing, which is step number 10. Ask. Why are you coming into town? How can I help you? We use an automated platform called Smart BnB. It has all artificial intelligence built in. We're able to track communications. If guests ask about certain questions, we set up fields beforehand that will automatically respond. Airbnb is all based on algorithms. So the more that you're continuously in your listing, adapting and changing, the higher you are rated on review searches. So they go in daily and hourly, actually, to kind of go in and manipulate. They'll change a period, act like they're changing something here. That always keeps our listings top of mind. But when it comes to a 24/7 business, it helps when some of those responses are automated. And then at the end of any automated response, we say this is an automated response. If you ask any particular question that was unanswered, our team will be reviewing this and get back to you as soon as possible. So those are kind of like the 10 steps that I say. And then I always say, what makes for a good Airbnb? You need to be story-centric. So what does story-centric mean? We're in the age of social media and selfies for the past multiple amount of years. And I have some stats for you. Let me see. Which I think is crazy. So in 2017, I'm going to use 2017 to 19. Instagram had 46,200 posts uploaded every single minute. Every single minute, there was almost 47,000 posts being posted. In 2019, it jumped to 348,000 posts are posted every single minute on Instagram. This is a great way. I mean, I've actually booked Airbnbs because I've seen friends that I follow stay in a certain place, and I want to either stay in that location again or something near it or like it, or I've used that inspiration to help with the client. The more photo driven you can be, whether you have gallery walls, cool exposed brick, you have, so in some of our properties, we have cool art pieces or cool backyards that are really cool to hang out and have great photo opportunities. The more photo-centric you can be, the better off you are, because half the time, if you've ever watched myself, Josh, or even Dana stay at some place, we always do a walkthrough and we're showing everybody what's going on. And as funny as that sounds, so many people do that. I mean, I just stayed somewhere not too long ago and I FaceTimed my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, you got to see this. Look how cool this is. And like, we're walking through. And one of my cousins is remodeling a historic home right now. And I stayed somewhere that we had been dying to try to figure out how to make something work. And I was like, this property has what we've been looking for. Look at it. It's one of those things you're continuously adding value to someone's life, whether you even know it. So being story-centric is one. Being unique, how can you be quirky and unique, but you still appeal to the masses? And then obviously location is a great thing to think about as well. So do we have any more questions that have come in?
Yes, actually we do. So one question was, when you're setting a budget, to put money into a property. How do you set that budget? One of our comments came that somebody said they used to manage some Airbnbs and it was $5,000 to $7,000 a bedroom.
Yeah, I would say you're probably really close to being accurate. I have found that through some supplies that we use now, I can get it to, depending on the bedroom size and the way I'm staging it, we can get it to 3,000, and I actually just did a bedroom for 2,500. So what I typically do is when I start a project, I say, how much do I want to spend, or how much is the client going to allow me to spend? I take that whole number and then I create a whole presentation and I do it room by room. So I'll go living room, pantry, bathroom, bedroom 1, hallway, whatever rooms are in the house, and I list them out, and then I start to allocate numbers, and it becomes a game. And I say, well, I typically know that it's 3,000 to 5,000 to do a bedroom. This property is going to be bringing X amount of money in per month. I want it to be more of a $5,000 style bedroom. Here's 5,000 for the master. And you start with your bigger rooms first. So your master, your living room, bonus rooms, and kitchen. That's where you're going to start at first. And I literally build in an entire presentation that I have to present to any client. And I give them the expense report from the furnishings to the linens, to the TV, to all of the utensils, and everything's listed. So when they see that this room costs them $5,000, they don't think they're getting a bedroom suite for $5,000. They're seeing that they're getting 3 sets. So we have all of our properties, you have to have 3 sets of sheets per bed. You have to have 2 sets of comforters per mattress. You have to have a sound machine. You have to have we typically now try to do TVs in every bedroom. We've seen that's been a huge thing that has helped. And I literally list all of those items out. And then, you know, I might not know how much the exact art that I'm going to spend or find or use, but I'll say, okay, I had $300 left in my budget. That's towards art, and that's all I can spend. So making sure you understand and know your pricing up front, making sure you have shopped the market, and I'm happy to share anything that I can with, you know, what kind of sheets do you use? We're building a whole syndicate package that people can purchase where we will literally walk through all utensils to sheets to linens to terry that somebody can basically purchase and go to Amazon and buy all of this stuff.
Excellent. Do you find that virtual tours work for Airbnb?
I haven't done a lot of virtual tours with Airbnb. That I kind of reflected on that a little bit earlier, is why I go a little heavy with photos and descriptions. The crappy thing about Airbnb sometimes, unless it's an approved reservation, it's sometimes hard to communicate with, like, you can't necessarily send phone numbers or emails or videos or images. So stuff like that, there's ways to work around it to where you can get the potential guest to call you, and then from there you can kind of send them additional information. But I would say always make sure you're photo heavy, always make sure that you kind of do layouts. You can use a website called Box Brownie. They can virtually stage. They will, so we do twilight photos for all of our listings. It's $4 compared to probably your photographer who's charging you 50 to 130 plus bucks, $4. You can do layouts, so you can literally get on your iPad, draw a simple layout, bedroom, blah, 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 and they will do like a visual representation in a photo form that you can put on your listing as well.
Excellent. How do you pay attention, Angie asked, with American with Disabilities Act and wheelchair access?
So that can be really difficult. On your listing, it says, are you able to help those with disabilities, and like, are you accessibility friendly? And if you choose that option, there's certain criteria that you have to meet. If you know your property is not, then you definitely don't want to click that. And it's one of those things I am always, and our team knows, to be upfront and honest. If a property is even difficult for even an elderly person or someone with a walking issue, or who can't climb stairs, you don't want to attract that kind of client. So when they start to ask those questions, be upfront and honest. Don't worry if it's a $1,700 booking, it's not going to be worth it in the end. On all of our properties, we make sure that they have basic amenities from like fire extinguishers and first aid kits and all of that kind of stuff, but we haven't really adapted any of our properties that aren't accessible for those with disabilities, just because from a standpoint, it's probably not going to work for them anyways. And two, from a standpoint of the investor, the amount of money that they might have to sink into something, we always have recommendations either of other listings in the area that will say, unfortunately, our property is not going to be a good fit for you for these reasons. Here's this property. I know they offer excellent service. Or we make sure we have a property within our portfolio that can meet somebody with a disabilities need, and be upfront and honest from there. I mean, even if it's a ranch style home and there's 2 steps to get into the house, I list and explain that. You know, if it for some reason doesn't have a railing or it's a little bit difficult or tricky to get into, especially you'll see some of these older homes have things that are grandfathered in, that you can still use for the day-to-day consumer, but with somebody with disabilities, it might be an issue. But I will say from a bathroom standpoint, we'd add, even, you know, if the property is not necessarily friendly for someone with a disability, we'll add like support bars. We've moved towel bars away from the shower so people don't accidentally grab them and use it for support. We'll just go ahead and put a support bar out there. Think of ways like that even your regular person without a disability can still adapt and use a property. For example, one of our properties, the toilet is kind of on a built-up platform, but the wooden floor all blends together so you could stub your toe. We have signs and that kind of thing. So making sure even for your regular consumers that you are telling them what's going to happen at the property before they even get there. And then while they're there, you're using visual reminders so an accident doesn't occur.
Angie asked if you have a general rule in terms of a lower rate if someone wants to rent the property for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, so we do. For our standpoint, where we rent so we're on trend to rent over 500 homes or apartments or units this year. So we kind of have an understanding on what the market on a traditional rental would rent for. Obviously, when you have an Airbnb or short-term rental, it's furnished, you're paying for utilities, most likely lawn care, you're having all of these amenities built into one. You're still charging a premium, but it's not going to be the same price if somebody just went on there and booked, because you want to make it appealing. Let's say your average nightly rate's $150. You're not going to charge that person $100, although some people will pay, and if they pay, you just keep going. But you know, if they're asking you those questions, I always look at it from a standpoint to make sure it's a win-win, but you also don't want to potentially lose out on money as well. So you're probably going to lower your rate some. You're going to offer some kind of discount, whether it be 20 to 30% or whatever that might be. But you also don't want to give somebody 2 weeks for such a low rate that you could potentially have the opportunity to book it at a normal rate and make more money. Right now, there's times, you know, I kind of fluctuate, especially when it comes to like weekends or events that are happening on. I wouldn't discount because it's going to book regardless.
Excellent. Do we have any, okay, question from Carmen. How do you handle accident liability issues while your guests are staying?
So that's a good question. One, we keep all of our owners' insurance information on file. Two, we make sure that all of our clients have updated insurance policies. So when that's being said, you want to make sure that the insurance provider of that home is not just a traditional rental policy. Obviously, you're going to have other items and possessions within the home. So you need to make sure that the insurance provider is running it as a short-term rental. If not, it can be a huge downfall. And you also have to play careful too when it comes to insurance providers. Some of them will have a clause in there that says if it's not booked for X amount of days, that your policy is null and void. Well, with short term, you can't guarantee that it's going to rent for X amount of days. So making sure that you really shop and find the best option for your client. Anything from an accident or a liability standpoint. So for example, I'll use an example. We had a glass dining room table. This glass dining room table, the child put a hot pot directly on the glass. The glass cracked and cut her leg. We immediately reported it to the owner. We immediately called it into the insurance. We were obviously in direct communication with the guest. Luckily, her dad was a surgeon, so he just stitched it up right there and it was fine. But we're asking those probing questions from the get-go. Pick up the phone, stop, you know, make sure it's documented on the platform, but making sure that you pick up the phone and you're calling. Are you okay? What can we do to help? Here's the local hospital, X, Y, and Z. Making sure you report it into Airbnb. So you're calling the customer support line. Hey, we just wanted to let you know that there's been an accident. Here's what's happened. Knock on wood, we haven't had, that's basically the only issue liability thing that's happened. That's why I say when you go back to your steps and your systems, making sure you're walking the property. If you have a super slippery staircase, what can you do to prevent that? Can you add treads? Can you add other protection that's not going to cause an accident? So being very thorough. When you're designing a home, in your own home, you might lean a mirror against a wall. Well, if you have a toddler that's running around and accidentally bumps it because their dog's chasing them while they're staying with you, that whole mirror could fall and hurt someone. So you're kind of going above and beyond from the beginning to make sure there's precautions and ways, especially when it comes to pools and hot tubs, making sure all of that's displayed. I listened to a podcast not too long ago that unfortunately, I think it was in California, a 3-year-old fell out of a window from a second story and unfortunately didn't survive. But they won the lawsuit because the property management company didn't explain or have it posted about window safety. There was a bed that was placed right in front of it, like a day bed that someone could be on that could cause an accident. And there wasn't proper locks on the windows. So it's literally thinking, even from the simplest thing of furniture placement, could this cause an accident for something? Do all of my windows properly work? If you put it up, does it automatically slam down? That's going to be an issue. So you have to take more time on the front end and overthink those kind of things to make sure your property is acceptable for guests to come in. Obviously, accidents happen, but it's how you respond that's going to end up saving the day.
Keith, a tip that I've heard I wanted to kind of touch base with you on is always having laundry on site.
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's probably the number one question people ask us. They're like, why can't I just have one set of sheets? They're going to clean them. Well, for us, we might have 20 turns in one day that cleaning crew is responsible for. We want the sheets to obviously be cleaned, especially not now, but we also want the rest of the house to be perfect. So we have 3 sets of sheets minimum per bed. So there's a backup sheet in case an accident happens. There's always a fresh, clean set of sheets. And then there's the dirty sheets that they're taking off the bed. Same thing when it comes to a comforter. We have recently found a set on Amazon that you can get a king comforter set for like $70. That comes with the comforter, the shams, the sheets, great quality, microfiber, get raving reviews about it. That's inexpensive if you have to replace. We typically say 2 to 3 sets of towels per guest. I've seen that guests, especially that are staying longer, want more towels, less laundry for them to have to do. We always leave at least a set of towel per guest. If someone says that there are only 2 people are coming, but it's an 8-person house, we still leave 8 sets of towels out. Don't try to save yourself from a laundry standpoint and a cleaning standpoint, because what happens if for some reason they didn't update their booking? Always have the amount of towels out that should be for the entire amount of guests to stay. And then from that standpoint, on our higher end properties, we leave 2 sets of towels out per guest. And we have 3 sets of towels per guest extra in the cleaning closet. So always make sure you have an overkill of linens. You can find things that are inexpensive. But I mean, for example, the simplest things in life happen, that a stain can happen. We use all white sheets, easy to bleach, easy to clean, typically all white comforters. And then we use dark gray towels. I used to use white, but they don't survive very long. So from a cost perspective, we use all dark gray. And then we actually have makeup black washcloths that we use in all of our Airbnbs that have embroidered makeup on there. Even the dark gray ones can sometimes leave a pigmentation on them, so that the black washcloths are always there as well.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions? If you guys could please type it in the comments here.
And I think a cool thing to kind of think about too, when you're kind of looking at all of this, I think there's a lot of things happening in real estate right now, and you guys are the boots on the ground. I literally walk our downtown very frequently and other suburbs within our community looking for opportunity zones. and I kind of speak things into existence. So for example, there's been a property that I've been eyeing for a year and a half, and I actually met with an investor yesterday who just acquired that property. A, I just wanted it to manage because I thought it was cool. But B, the last year I've been thinking that would make such a cool Airbnb. It makes such a cool Airbnb. He finally was able to purchase this property, heard about us, called us out of the blue, and now we're getting ready to help them with that remodel project. And the cool thing about it is it's a historic property. There's an old historic shotgun house next to it, and then there's a new duplex behind it. He bought all three. They've all been vacant for 10 years, and he finally was able to get the owner to agree to a sell. And we're going to turn them all into Airbnbs, and we're going to allow the opportunity for a larger group party to be able to rent all at once as well. So you can kind of adapt that. You can be creative. Great thing with like duplexes are too, that both sides, I would say from a duplex standpoint, unless you're living on the other side, they either both need to be traditional or both need to be short-term rentals, because you're going to have a conflict of interest. When they both know they're the same kind of people staying, it's a little bit easier to manage expectations. But also from a duplex standpoint, it's really cool to think about that it's double the income. So for example, you can either rent it out individual side or you can rent it out as a whole house. And for example, we had a unit in Frankfort, Kentucky, that the owner purchased it for $7,000, the duplex. They did minor renovations on it, rented it out for almost 2 years as traditional rentals for $500 per side. Right now, each side is bringing in about $2,000 gross per month. So, I mean, I really think it's important for you guys to start looking at like what's in your market, what things are, you know, dilapidated or run down, what are properties are in an LLC that aren't looking like they're being maintained. How could you or your clients potentially acquire those properties? A is going to help the community. You're going to be able to continue to increase property values. And two, you're bringing a fresh light to a property that already exists that's potentially being run down or dilapidated. We found that, you know, contrary to belief, that most of our Airbnbs are maintained and are better quality than our traditional rentals. Just because you have such frequency of people going in and maintaining, the yards are always kept up. Sometimes your tenants have a different expectation with how their lawns should be mowed, but you're always treating it as a 5-star experience. And we've seen a huge increase in neighbor support when you're upfront and you're honest. You say, hey, we're managing this property, or we've purchased this property. This is our intent on the property. If you ever have issues, here's who to contact. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We don't stand for that kind of stuff. And we want to make sure that your property is being treated because this is your primary residence. But we also want to make sure that this is an asset for you in the long run.
Okay, Heath, we had a question. When you use the Airbnb platform, how do they funnel fees to the owner?
So what we do, and I make sure I understand your question correctly. So the way it's set up is we control everything. So we control the platform of the listing. We control all financials. Basically, any owner that is with us from an Airbnb standpoint is 100% passive income. They get a direct deposit and an owner statement every single month, and they might be frequently called about a potential issue or maintenance, something like that. We've set a maintenance cap on all of that, but we itemize everything out. So there's a detailed summary. So it shows rental amount of income come in. It shows cleaning amount of income come in, and these owners are able to use that as a deduction and an expense, because technically it's income coming in, but we're directly outputting it and paying it towards the cleaners. Airbnb charges a service fee. We document that for them. We only charge our management fee on the nightly rate, so we don't charge it on top of the cleaning fee or the total amount booked. It's just on the nightly rate. And then we itemize everything out from there. So utilities, if they pay their mortgage, insurance, whatever we pay for, if we don't pay for those things, obviously that's not included. And then we'll list out things like supplies or pet fee income. So basically everything is funneled out. When it comes to fees, the owner is responsible for the service fee, not us as a management company. And the owner is responsible for any kind of fees towards the property. So if they have to do a deep clean every quarter, if they have to do service agreements on the filter, the air filters or gutters or something like that, that's just an expense of doing business. We're just managing their asset for them.
Sherry asked, what does the owner operator split look like? So let's say that 100% fee is charged for the night.
Yep.
Do you charge like a percentage of that and then the owner gets the rest?
So what we do is we charge a flat amount. Our management fee is 20% on the nightly rate. We're lower than most in the market. And the reason that is because I can support that number. We trust in that number, and we're offering an extra amount of service to be able to produce the income that makes it a win-win situation, so we can make more money and the owner makes more money. So on a $100 a night rental, we would get $20. Airbnb charges 3% of the cleaning fee and the service, the cleaning fee and the nightly rate. So let's say it was $100 plus a $75 cleaning fee. They charge 3%. That's $5.25 plus $20 is what we would charge on that 100 night. The owner's going to get $74.75 deposited from that one night into their account. We do all of our statements in arrears, so they get it on the 15th of every month, the following month, and they get one lump sum. So even though on Airbnb you're getting deposits the day after somebody checks in, we're not turning around and depositing it into our customer's account. We're basically reconciling, holding on to that money, and then giving them one lump sum with a detailed summary, and then giving them an overview of how many nights the property rented, their occupancy rate, feedback, anything like that.
Excellent. Okay, so Martha asked about the average management fee. I think we talked about 20%. Do you know of anyone that's a good manager of our Airbnbs within the Central Ohio?
I don't, and we keep getting asked to come out there and manage stuff for you guys. So continue to pull us, and maybe that opportunity will present itself. When it comes to management fees too, obviously shop competitors. So for example, in the Red River Gorge, which is a really cool development that's getting ready to happen, and it's a natural park. If you're not familiar with hiking and everything, I strongly recommend you guys coming down. It's beautiful. But some of the older style management companies up there are charging anywhere from 30 to 40% and offering no service just because they control the market. If you go to Charleston or you go to Florida or something like that, those typical management fees are around 40%. But you got to think too, your dollar amount's a lot higher. So kind of those numbers make sense. For us, we arrived at the 20% after shopping a lot of Midwest markets, shopping a lot of competitors around us. We're the only professional company in Central Kentucky and Lexington in particular that is managing. We kind of control that market and that data. And then it just has to make sense. You should be making, from a management standpoint, let's see here. We look at numbers compared to like how much it's going to bring in. So we kind of have a dollar amount. So let's say a traditional property rents for, you bring in $2,000 a month. You're bringing in around $400 a month from management fee. On average, if that was a traditional rental and you're charging your traditional rental management fees, you're anywhere from like $75 to $100. So for one Airbnb, your fee should be 3 to 5 times what it would be a traditional rental, if not more. So for example, for you guys, the $2,500, we charge 9% on that farm I was telling you about earlier. So we made $225 a month on that farmhouse traditionally. Let's say last month, I think she rented it for 14. I'm just going to use whole numbers, 14,000. 20% of that, we made $2,800 on that one property last month. Yeah.
Excellent. We had a question from Carmen on the Red River Gorge area. What are average rental rates in that area?
So you guys are going to die when I tell you this. So literally that house I was telling you about earlier that they purchased for $135,000, it was previously on the market as an Airbnb. They were getting $169 a night, and their average occupancy fluctuated anywhere from like 40% to like 56%. When our clients purchased the property, they did some minor rehab on the interior, such as paint and just minor cosmetic stuff, new furnishings, put it back on the market. Our average nightly rate went from $169, and we didn't manage it before. So their average nightly rate before was $169. Our average nightly rate now is $225, wow, even through COVID. And we are booked 30 out of 30 days every every single month since we launched it in May. Every single month is booking 100% of the time. So, I mean, you take that, that's almost $7,000 to $8,000. Our average nightly rate's $225. So that's basically $7,000 a month on a $135,000 investment. They're getting ready to do a potential 4.5-star resort that's similar to the Greenbrier and Blackberry Farm up in the Red River Gorge. So if you're looking for an investment opportunity, really start to focus on the Gorge area. It's going to be very similar to both of those developments. It's going to be a 4.5-star instead of a 5. And I'm like, well, still 4.5 stars nicer than a lot of things in this general area. So, but there's going to be opportunity to purchase land on this development and have your own personal cabin that you can then rent out. But there's a lot of development going on up in the Gorge area. It's only going to continue to increase. And your returns are just insane. So for us, that property I was telling you about that has such insane numbers is right off of exit 33, if you're familiar with the area. It's easy to get to. So literally you could be to Natural Bridge in 7 minutes. You can be to the Red River Gorge within 7 minutes. And you're also close to a lot of food, gas, and that kind of thing. So the cool thing to think about that is you're gonna have two different kind of clienteles. And this kind of goes back to your destination style property. This kind of property is going to appeal more to like what I call city folk that want to be able to experience woods and this relaxation. But there's a couple of cabins around. They can't necessarily see them. But literally at the bottom of the hill, there's a gas station, a convenience store, and restaurants. But they go to the top of the hill and they feel like they're right in the middle of the gorge. Compared to somebody who's an avid hiker or a rock climber that might want to be out a little bit and not necessarily have the amenities of Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. So really kind of paying into your attention on your clientele, but that's where I would stay, is more centrally located, because as this continues to develop and no matter what area you're in, you appeal to the masses comparing to just appealing to one certain kind of clientele.
Heath, I had a question. One of the popular areas for Ohio for hiking is Hocking Hills. Yeah. Have you heard about that area, and do you have any thoughts on that? Is there any major hosts over there?
I have not, but I would be very intrigued to see what's kind of going on in that market. And I'm actually going to write that down, something to kind of look into, because especially through COVID, I think we've all kind of realized the importance of family and friends and quality time. Something that before all of this kind of pandemic hit that we were kind of getting detached from. And these are easy ways for people to experience life, even through a recession. And I always get asked, are Airbnbs and short-term rentals recession-proof? Nothing in life is recession-proof, but how can you build something that's going to kind of bulletproof yourself to be able to accommodate no matter what the scenarios are going on? Short-term rentals aren't going to go anywhere, even through regulations and that kind of stuff. People want to stay in this style of lodging. No matter the area, numbers are going to continue to fluctuate, but the more that you can offer an amenity, the better. People, when a recession does happen, and even now through a pandemic, they're not going to necessarily drive all the way or fly to Florida. Instead, they're going to look for something in a surrounding area that might be an hour to 2 hours to 6 hours max away from them that they can get to, that's easily accessible, fun, outdoors, family friendly. So hiking trails, places to do outdoor activities, bigger cities, even like smaller cities have kind of been a little bit more appealing, just because you can get there in a short distance amount of time, and you can host two families that go to, let's say, vacation every day or every year, travel to one central area, stay under one roof for a lot cheaper than they would a hotel. And they're still getting that quality time, they're still getting an experience, and they're not having to travel to a destination. So I think that's something really to kind of focus on. The more amenity driven that you can be, the more unique your property can be as well. You're going to continue to attract a vast array of clientele rather than just the particular clients you're looking to host.
Keith, one of the things that came up is obviously with COVID, we've changed a lot of things. You've already hinted on one part of that. We're not flying, we're driving. Yep. And typically, like for me, 3 hours is about where I'd like to be. I don't like going past that. It's fun enough drive, throw down some Sirius XM, and then we'll get there. What things have you done since all of the major events around horses, around, in Columbus, it's the Quarter Horse Congress, it's the Arnold Classic, it's those type of events, it's our arts festivals. When those are canceled, what are you doing to attract people to those specific properties when there's not much to do?
So I don't know if anybody's been watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, but now I have this new obsession with chess that I didn't even know I had, and now I equate it to Airbnb and short-term rentals. I'm like, this is kind of like a chess game. It's one of those things you're continuously adapting and playing with. One thing that we've really done, and we've done from the get-go to beat any competitors or private people managing in our market, is we offer one-night stays. That's huge. It's a huge area of missed opportunity that people don't really realize, especially you just hit it, Troy, on the head. I mean, I just booked 3 clients or guests last night who are traveling, and this is a midway stop for them. They want 1 or 2 nights. They just need somewhere to sleep, kind of relax, stretch their legs, and we've seen a huge increase in that. And because we offer one-night stays, they're able to stay with us compared to going to a competitor or to a hotel. So you're continuously snagging that. 2 is you're doing price incentives. So even through all of this, you can increase your nightly rates. So let's say you typically on average is $135. You're going to market to $225, and then you're going to throw this huge percentage discount on it of, let's say, like 50% or something like that. That's going to bring it back towards your average amount. But when people are shopping, they see this huge 50% or 30% flashed in front of them. They don't know that they're not really getting a deal, but it appears they're getting a deal. So it's little things like that. Other things that we've done is the amenities that we've offered, the communication, kind of really playing into people's cues on while they're traveling. And we've been able to book people because of that, traveling to their destination. They stop and stay with us. And when they're on their way home, they stop and stay with us again because they were excited. They were happy with what the services they offered. While they were down there, they booked again on their way back to stay with us.
Keith, one other thing, question is, we have to dumb it down sometimes to the lowest common denominator to TV operations and Roku and certain things on that. Do you leave a manual behind for the house? And do you recommend having local restaurants, local entrepreneurs and things in that book so people can easily order things?
Yep. So all of our houses and units have a house manual within them. Within the house manual, it's going to have instructions on how to use certain things, who to call for emergencies, their address and location, a welcome letter. Then we go in and have, this is where the extra towels are located. Here's where you're going to find this at, the first aid kit. Really truly outlining all of that. And then we offer local recommendations. So we do local recommendations from our team, from the owners. We do surrounding areas in case they want to travel. Central Kentucky is really easy. You can travel anywhere in 30 to 40 minutes and get a whole new experience. So we do that. We're looking next year to partner with a bunch of local restaurants and vendors and boutiques on doing this whole concierge kind of package to where we can offer discounts and cards and that kind of stuff going on. We're developing a Kentucky Life magazine that's going to have all of these people featured in it that people can literally walk through and see. We start recommendations from the time of booking. So within that automated platform I was telling you about, they might not be coming here for bourbon or food, but we're giving them recommendations anyways, and it's automatically sent, and it sends them to a link that they can look at a bunch of things. We're continuously promoting local and throwing that in front of them. Another thing that we do is we use cork boards. It's an inexpensive way to create interaction, and we'll post them in a high traffic area within the home and leave note cards, and we'll post flyers and that kind of thing on there, but guests can leave their own reviews. So for example, one of the ones I always use this example is, it said, "This is the first place we said, I love you." And oh my gosh, you get this whole interaction of people commenting back and forth. You'll see like, oh my, go visit Buffalo Trace. Dan, the local tour guide, is amazing. He's been there for 30 years. You have to experience this at the end. And it creates this interactive way. So as soon as the guests walk in, they're seeing this 5-star experience that other guests have left for you through a note card. And it creates that 5-star experience. It's an interactive way. We have another property that kind of has like a mural chalk wall that people can literally like draw pictures on or like leave messages and kind of that thing. So the more interactive you can be. But when it comes to TVs and that kind of stuff, I always say make sure it's simple and easy. If grandma can't use it, then I wouldn't put it in there. And then 2, when it comes to a standpoint, if it is a little bit more difficult or you have to go through steps, we'll even print out like in a picture frame, a cute little Canva made instruction list. And even though it's in the house manual or the instructions that we send them, we post it right next to the TV again, because people aren't ready to receive something until they're ready to receive it. I mean, we have that joke here at the office. We'll be walking and somebody will tell us something and we'll be like, we literally will say, I'm not ready to receive it. Come back to me in 5 minutes. Same thing with your guest. You can flash it in front of them a million times. If they're not ready to receive it, they're not ready to receive it. So even being as cheesy as putting those little labels on stuff around the house on how to operate things will truly help.
Vernon asked, there's an app today on Amazon Fire Stick that starts when the TV for STR. Do you know anything like this?
Don't. There's an app on Amazon Fire Stick that starts with I don't. So we typically use the Roku TCL TVs. We don't really put cable in any of our properties just because you can watch anything through YouTube these days. Just in case people aren't as tech savvy, we will get like a $20 local antenna from Amazon that can pull local channels. So if they're coming in for a particular event, they could potentially access that. But we leave instructions for even those that are technologically not as savvy on how to access certain events. If they're coming in town, especially with sporting events, having minimum capacity, if they want to watch the big game on TV and we don't have cable and they can't get onto ESPN or don't have an account with something, we point them in the free direction or the way they could do something. So.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions as we wrap up Heath's presentation today? All right. Thank you, Heath, so much. It's been an amazing. We did record this. With your permission, we can send it to others.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. And we'll go ahead and get that out to our audience today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. It's been very helpful, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome. Any questions, let me know, guys, and it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
See you, Troy.
See ya.
Missed it.